As we've witnessed over the past few years, Chevrolet has revamped their lineup, more specifically their crossovers, such as the Trax, Trailblazer, and new Equinox. Even though Chevrolet is starting to move in the direction of electrification, they haven't yet given up on internal combustion engines and gas-powered vehicles. Chevrolet typically focuses on their larger SUVs and pickup trucks. They've done very well for themselves throughout the decades. But crossovers still drive the market and in fact are the bread and butter of American transportation. And now for 2025, Chevrolet might just have a vehicle that will give Honda and Toyota a run for their money. Today we'll be taking a look at the 2025 Chevrolet Traverse Z71. The Z71 badge doesn't typically find itself on a crossover, and yet here we are. In today's video, we're going to check out what this model has to offer. We're going to check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a quick test drive, and see why. If you're looking for a family-friendly, but also rugged and off-road worthy 3-row crossover, maybe taking a look at the Chevrolet Traverse might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Copeland Chevrolet here in Hudson, Massachusetts, for letting me come down here to check out the Chevrolet Traverse Z71. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Chevrolet inventory. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For 2025 with the Chevrolet Traverse Z71, you're looking at a starting cost of just over $49,000. Priced very competitively with that Honda Pilot TrailSport, which I have a feeling that model is what Chevrolet is aiming for, because right now in this segment, everything is geared towards the off-road and being rugged, and the Chevrolet Traverse is no exception. Although if you don't want to go off-road, you have no intention of doing so, you can go with an LT, an RS, or High Country for a more classy and family-friendly experience. Although you're not losing that family-friendliness with the Traverse for the Z71. All you're really receiving is more aggressive mechanical components that makes this far more capable of a crossover than ever before, such as a twin-clutch all-wheel drive system, also drive modes, so you have more terrain management here with this model. And lastly, the all-terrain tires and then unique damping for the suspension, making this vehicle capable of taking on those elements, taking on those off-roads. And with those capabilities, with those new mechanical components, you have an SUV that looks rather rugged and aggressive compared to last generation. In fact, from far away, you look at this model and you're thinking, is that a Tahoe? Because that does not look like a Chevrolet Equinox. And then also, you look at this model and you think, all right, is it a body-on-frame SUV or is it still unibody? Well, sadly, it's unibody. However, that's really not a major takeaway because every other manufacturer in this market uses vehicles that also have unibody chassis. So in regards to the design though for the Z71, I mean, this right here is a good looking SUV. From up front, you have the full LED headlights and LED daytime running lights. Just like we saw in other crossovers in the Chevrolet product line, the headlight housings are separate. That's very trendy in this market, but also typical for Chevrolet. But straight on, when you look at this model straight on, it kind of looks like a Silverado from far away with the gloss black grille, the Z71 badge, and then also with the chrome strip also being darkened out as well with the black badging. Makes this vehicle look rugged, look sporty, look aggressive. That goes hand in hand with your tow hooks found on the lower portion of the front bumper. They did a fantastic job here with the Traverse where it does look very truck-like and robust. There are some minor elements here that might get overlooked for this model, such as the color contrasting accents for the lower portion of the front bumper. And then also you have functional side air curtains. I mean, I was not expecting that when I saw this model from the outside. So it does give you some aerodynamics to this model with it being a large boxy SUV. Then as you make your way over to the side profile, you are going to have those all-terrain tires here and some aggressive cladding, but it's not caked on there like so many other vehicles in this market, or really what we're seeing now in the automotive industry. But one thing I do want to point out though is that with these all-terrain tires, one, road noise isn't as bad as you would think, but two, you don't have to go with the all-terrain tires if you don't want to, if you want to purchase a Z71. In fact, as an optional package, you can go with all seasons. That is huge. Once again, giving you some versatility here with this model, because I see the comments all the time. When I look at vehicles in the 3-row or 2-row segments that are rugged and off-road worthy, and they only offer all-terrain tires, a lot of you in the comment section say, I love what the model's offering, but I don't want to go with those all-terrains. Well, you don't have to do that here with the Z71 if you don't want to. Now, with the side mirror caps, they are in gloss black, giving you a two-tone look for this model. Better yet, you will have turn signal indicators and also blind spot detection for added safety. Now also adding on to the color contrasting accents here, you will have gloss black roof rails for that sportier appearance. And then as we make our way around to the back here for the final third of this model, I love the LED taillight design here. It gives that X shape, but then also it makes its way into the center portion of the rear fascia. Now the Chevrolet Traverse traditionally has never really looked that great, if I'm going to be completely honest. The last generation was just so out there and bland, where it was like, all right, you know, we have a Chevrolet Traverse, it's a 3-row crossover, a nice upgrade over the Equinox, but it's not giving me anything in regards to its exterior appearance. But for 2025 here, we have a really good looking SUV. And as you know, I love to see visible exhaust outlets and their quad tips. That is right. So even though we don't have a V8 under the hood of this monster, we at least still have the sportier design elements to this vehicle. Now also we have the black badging for the Chevrolet badge for the center portion of the rear fascia, and then also the Traverse all-wheel drive badge and Z71, letting you know this is far from being an LT. And in fact, if you park both models next to each other, there is a clear distinction here that the Z71 is the way to go here if you're looking at buying a 3-row crossover from Chevrolet, at least for the Traverse lineup. Taking a peek under the hood for the 2025 Chevrolet Traverse Z71, you are going to receive a 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. Producing 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque, it is paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission. Now I know what you're thinking, Turbo 4. I want a bigger engine out of this model. With this Turbo 4, it is quite peppy. I mean, you are going to be able to put the power down pretty easily here past slower drivers, and it is a good engine if you're just driving around the city and suburbs, but if you're someone who has a lead foot, you might want something a bit bigger like the Tahoe with that V8. So keep all of that in mind though, but with the 2.5, I think it does pretty good in this market compared to other Turbo 4s out of a 3-row crossover in this segment. But probably more importantly is going to be that fuel economy, because you're looking at right around 19 miles per gallon in the city and 24 miles per gallon on the highway. So you have a Turbo 4, it's not going to be the most efficient in this market. But either way, if you're looking for a vehicle that is going to be off-road tuned and off-road worthy, you have that here with this model. And better yet, with the enhancements for the Z71, you also have all-wheel drive coming standard for better year-end capability and versatility. Hopping inside the Chevrolet Traverse Z71, we're greeted by EvoTech seats for both the driver and passenger. They're also heated as well, so on those cold mornings you can be nice and warm. Now the passenger side is manually adjustable, whereas the driver's side does have that power adjustability. So you'll have to go a little higher up in the trim levels for the passenger to receive the same creature comforts and amenities. Now with these seats though and the EvoTech upholstery, this is more like a synthetic leather, which is not going to feel super grand or upscale, but is a nice upgrade over cloth upholstery. You're going to notice that these seats provide a lot of cushioning, a decent amount of support, and bolstering, so on those longer road trips or weekday commutes, you'll find yourself very comfortable here. And also when you do go off-road to camp or ski and snowboard, this might be a great vehicle to take with you on those road trips. Also, by going with the Z71, you're going to have the Z71 badge stamped out on the headrest for a nice touch. But really though, it's the technology. It's what you have here at your fingertips and what you see straight ahead of you, because you have a full digital gauge cluster and a 17.7-inch infotainment system with Google built-in software. Now, this right here is where Chevrolet is making some great strides, not only with the Traverse, but also other vehicles in the lineup. Let's be real here. GM has never really been a class leader when it comes to technology. But now for 2025, when you're comparing this to what you have with Toyota, Honda, Ford, even Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, this is going to be on par with them. Now, I do think a lot of you are going to like what you have here, where it's not super in-depth or intuitive, but just gives you enough here where it makes the Traverse feel modern and somewhat futuristic. So on your heated steering wheel, you are going to have a button here that controls this layout. Now you can have a traditional layout here where it shows you what music you're listening to, date and time, and then also outside temperature, and then you have that traditional gauge in the middle. However, you can display Google Maps from this screen. That is right, so you don't have to look over to the infotainment system. This would be my layout. I would choose this layout at all times. That way, I know exactly where I'm going. Now, you can also check out your cruise control settings from here as well. But Chevrolet isn't going to give you an in-depth screen here like you're going to find in luxury products. So keep that in mind, but I like the fact that you can customize this layout to your liking. Now let's take a look at this 17.7-inch infotainment system. So you have Google built-in software with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with your Google Play Store and Amazon Alexa. Now, one thing I do like here about this layout is that you have all your widgets in place. We see a lot of this now with Android-based software, and I do think this is much more easier to use used than what you had in the last generation's Chevrolet Traverse. Now, like we're seeing across the entire industry right now, at the bottom of the screen will be your quick access icons for your dual zone climate control up front, heated front seats, AC, fan speed, fan direction. So all of this is going to be right here, but you do have some physical buttons on the dashboard beneath the head unit where you are going to be able to control that fan speed. You're going to be able to control that front and rear defrosters. So you at least have some tactile and analog experience here with the Traverse for 2025. Now, at the top of the screen will be quick access icons, which get you to your home screen. Also, your Google Maps, which again, a lot of you might want to access immediately when you are behind the wheel of this model. Also, you will have all your safety systems here, such as your traction control on and off, auto high beam, park assist, your camera, power window lockout. Lastly will be your phone connectivity, and then also if you are towing something, you'll have all of that right here at your fingertips. Now, one thing I do want to point out here with this head unit and how it's laid out is that on the left side of the screen will be your lane centering button, but then also the button that accesses your exterior lighting. So from here, you can turn the lighting on or off, or have those headlights on at all times. But then jumping over to the left side of the dashboard, yeah, we're jumping all over the place here. You have your all-wheel drive system button, and then also your auto start stop, but then probably more importantly is your drive mode selector. So from here, you can select normal, sport, off-road, terrain, tow, and haul. Because this is the Z71 package with a dual clutch all-wheel drive system, you're gonna have more capability here than that LT. So you might want to keep all of that in mind. But really though, what you have here with this infotainment system, I think is very adequate and sufficient in this market. Now, when you do place a Traverse in reverse, I'm a poet and didn't even know it, you are going to have a rear backup camera with trajectory, obviously. Now, no top view or side views. I wish we'd have that here for the Z71 with this being off-road worthy. Now, you are going to have a trailer hitch cam here, which can be doubled as a bumper cam, so that way you're not backing into a vehicle behind you. However, with this being a Z71, I would love to see the camera systems become more standard on this model, maybe for future model years, because it's only a $500 option to get the HD surround vision. So I think that's most certainly worth it for a vehicle of this size. Now, as we continue on towards the center console, you are going to have that row of buttons here for your front and rear defrosters, and also dials for your dual zone climate control. Love to see that. Beneath that will be your wireless phone charging pad to go along with the USB-C and USB-A outlet. You're going to have two cup holders, obviously, and then also a nice storage compartment for some loose change or possibly a wallet or other smaller items. And as always, you are going to have that center storage compartment, which is pretty deep here. You could probably store a couple water bottles, actually plenty of water bottles here. So when you are going on those off-road excursions, you can have some gear here or some essentials when you are going on those trails with the family or some good friends. And then to wrap up the front seating area, we have a very rare option from what I hear. We have a panoramic moonroof equipped on our Traverse, bringing in a lot of natural light to the interior, but also opening up the interior, making it seem a lot bigger than it is in reality. So if you find a model with a Z71 and also with this panoramic moonroof, go for it, because it might be a rare option for 2025. Now, continuing on for passengers in the second row, they're greeted by right around 41.5 inches of legroom. That is going to be a common theme here, where you have a lot of interior space for this vehicle. As you can tell from the outside, the Traverse is quite large for a 3-row SUV in this market. That's why, like I said before, you would think this is a body-on-frame SUV, and it's not. And that is what's so deceptive about this model. But because of that, you have a lot of interior space, not only for the second row, but the third row, and then also overall cargo capacity. And we'll get into this in a minute. With 41.5 inches of legroom, that is close to being class leading. And because of that, tall passengers can be in the back very comfortably and enjoy the driving experience and that road trip. Even with the panoramic moonroof, there is a lot of headroom here, so I don't think tall passengers will be hitting their head on the headliner. Now, as you can tell, we have the captain's chairs today for the Z71, and that is one thing I want to point out here with the Traverse, because I've never really seen this in this market. Chevrolet, with the LT, which is the trim just beneath the Z71, pre-selects the captain's chairs, which is a bit of a surprise. Now, with this model, it is a 7-passenger vehicle, but you can go with an 8-passenger configuration. Personally, I like the captain's chairs, but that would be me being selfish here, being someone who would be sitting in the back. But really though, what you have here is a vehicle that feels sporty, it feels fun, and more importantly, family friendly. Now back here, you are going to have some amenities, such as 2 cup holders on the center console, and probably more importantly, climate control. So you can adjust the fan speed and the climate back here, so that way on those longer road trips you can be nice and comfortable. There will be 2 USB-C inputs, and then lastly, with the second row and these captain chairs, you can recline them a bit by about 10 to 15 degrees, maximizing that headroom and also maximizing that interior comfort. And finally, for passengers in the third row, you're going to receive right around 32 inches of legroom, making this a true 3-row SUV. Now, I am not saying this is a Chevrolet Tahoe, because a Tahoe probably would be a bit more practical. But compared to other 3-row crossovers in this market, this is more versatile and capable. At 32 inches of legroom, you could squeeze in average-sized adults. Is that ideal? Probably not, but you can have taller kids sit back here as well, and you're not sacrificing anything here by having a third row, because we're going to talk about that with the cargo space. I'm very impressed here with Traverse for 2025 in regards to its size and interior dimensions. Now, also more importantly here is the amount of headroom, because you would think that for a 3-row crossover like this, headroom wouldn't be very abundant, and in fact, it's not too bad. So I think you can have average-sized adults sit back here relatively comfortably, and I'm using the term relatively very lightly here. However, I do think that compared to other rivals in this market, not only does Traverse outclass them for third row seating area and capacity, it also just gives you a lot more versatility and capability as a family-friendly crossover. Now, also, you do have a third seat here in the center, which a lot of manufacturers don't throw in this market. So it is a 7-passenger vehicle overall, which is probably why captain's chairs are pre-selected on the LT. So you can go with an 8-seater or 7-seater. That just gives you a lot of flexibility in this market for a vehicle at around $50,000. So that is huge. Now, back here, you are going to have some cup holders, obviously, and then a USB-C input on both sides of this third row, so that way people back here can charge up their smartphones or tablets. And making your way around to the back one more time to take a look at the rear cargo area. Obviously, with the Z71, you are going to receive a power liftgate. Now, inside, behind the third row seats, you're looking at right around 23 cubic feet of room. That is right, 23 cubic feet. You guys know that I'm very critical about that for 3-row SUVs, where there's not enough space behind the third row where I can store all my camera gear. Well, today, that was not an issue at all, because I had 3 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, and there was more than enough room to stack on other items as well. So if you are going on a road trip with the family, or maybe running those errands, you'll be able to have your kids in the third row and get those groceries. But it does go one step further beyond that, because beneath the floor mat, you're going to have even more cargo space. So you can probably store a bag or 2 back there, also some electronics if you don't want people peeking in and stealing what you have. Also, another thing too is I noticed there are some indentations for a rear cargo cover. So that is really nice to have here for a model in this market. So 23 cubic feet of room. We're starting off very strong here with the Traverse. Now, with the third row seats folded, you're looking at right around 56 cubic feet of room. Right then and there, we're already in class-leading territory, because this is better than what you're going to find from a Honda Pilot, from a Toyota Highlander or Grand Highlander. This is huge. So if you're someone who needs that practicality, that is a top priority. The Traverse, at least in this category, might be the choice to go with here. So if you're not using those third row seats, you have a very practical model out of the Traverse for 2025. But then we get into when we lower the second row seats. Now we're at 98 cubic feet of room. Now that is body-on-frame SUV territory, and at 98 cubic feet of room, that is class leading. So once again, if you need a vehicle that's going to have the interior space and you want the practicality and the intangibles, that's where Chevrolet has done very well for themselves for this model. This is a strong category for them. So if you are cross-shopping this with some other vehicles, you don't necessarily need the off-road capability. You don't really care about the performance as much, or even the technology. If practicality is your sole purpose and your sole desire out of an SUV in this market because you have a growing family, the Traverse does make a lot of sense. It's also, in my opinion, more of that baby Tahoe that I think makes this a great value now for this generation. If there's one crossover or SUV in this market that deserves a V6, it's the Chevrolet Traverse. Now, I'm not saying that the 2.5-liter Turbo 4 is a bad engine, but considering how much horsepower we have and pound-feet of torque, at times I feel like this engine is under some stress here. Now, it could just be because this engine is somewhat loud and audible compared to other Turbo 4s and V6s in this segment. Then it also could be the fact that when I look at this vehicle from the outside, it kind of looks like a Chevrolet Silverado. So I'm thinking it has to have either a V6 or a V8. Now with this Turbo 4 though, it is quite peppy and has a good amount of performance considering what we have here. I mean, this is a large 3-row crossover, and I think it's most certainly competitive in its market in regards to its performance. But I wish we had that V6, because the way this vehicle drives, the way it performs, especially with the Z71, it feels very truck-like. It feels very body-on-frame-like. And because of that, I'm demanding more. I want more. Maybe in a different time period with where we are with the electrification of powertrains and the whole EV and emissions, maybe would have gotten a V6. But I just wish we had that here for this model, because I think this is a great update compared to where we were last generation. Now, it's not just what you have with the exterior design or even the interior technology. It's the fact this model does feel really refined. I mean, considering that we have an off-road tuned suspension, the all-terrain tires, the suspension isn't abusing you on a daily basis. It's actually quite soft and comfortable, making this a family-friendly choice in this market. Now, I will not say this is on par with a Honda Pilot, but I do think Chevrolet has closed that gap. Remember the last generation Traverse? It was quite soft. It was a very soft vehicle. And if you compare that to its domestic rivals, like such as the Ford Explorer or Jeep Grand Cherokee, you know, it's very difficult to say that Traverse was competitive. But I think now in 2025, it most certainly is. I mean, just look at what you have here, the long list of features and amenities, and also that practicality. You know, Chevrolet wasn't always the most practical choice in this market, and now it's class leading. And that is huge for a lot of buyers right now, especially with those tariffs, right? Because the Traverse doesn't fall under that category. It's made in America. So this could be an appealing option right now for those of you looking for a 3-row SUV. Now, aside from the intangibles, what else you have here? Well, with the seating position of this model, you have a lot of vision here. You sit pretty high up, of course, with that off-road tuned suspension giving you an extra inch of ground clearance. But again, this reminds me of maybe a Chevrolet Tahoe or Silverado, where it does feel very truck-like. So a nice commanding feel and presence over the roadways. The hood does stick out though quite a bit, so you might have some blind spots here and there. But aside from that, nice panoramic view. A-pillars are somewhat aggressive, so you might have some blind spots when you are approaching intersections or red lights. Taking a look at your side mirrors, they are decently sized. I can see what's my blind spots and the lane next to me. And looking out back, I wish we had a digital rear view mirror, but the third row seats are folded, so I can see what's directly behind me. What I also like too is this wrap steering wheel. It's very beefy, not aggressive 10 and 2 or firm 9 and 3 grips, but does the job. It definitely adds some engagement there and makes you feel as though you're driving a sporty vehicle. Also, you have paddle shifters too to rotate the gears yourself with this 8-speed automatic. For those of you looking to upsize from a Chevrolet Equinox, this is a better choice over the Tahoe from the standpoint that it's not as expensive. Because on the low end, you're spending just over $45,000 with the LT. The model we have today is over 50 grand, but still, consider the fact you have the 2.5 under the hood, even though I wish we had the V6. Also, the cargo space and the interior space makes this a nice upgrade if you are someone that has a growing family. Now, as we're entering the highway here, let's see what the Traverse can offer here. I have experienced this vehicle a bit off camera, and you are going to notice some disconnect between you and the road, because again, you have that higher ground clearance, but also there is a lot of body roll here. So you notice that weight transfer when you are in the corners. Even at highway speeds though, interior insulation is pretty good. You're not hearing a lot of that road noise despite the fact that you have the all-terrain tires. It's mostly this engine, and that is one thing that I have talked about quite a bit during this test drive, is that this engine does make a lot of noise, but that's really all you're hearing. I think for a vehicle at around $51,000, $55,000, the interior insulation is pretty much on par with its closest rivals. Now, for those of you wondering if you have enough power to pass slower drivers, you can most certainly do that here with this model. Again, 325 horsepower. This is going to be more than enough for most of you out there. Now, one thing that does impress me and surprise me here is, one, the braking, which is pretty strong too. Not a lot of travel on that brake pedal to slow this vehicle down. That's impressive. But two is the steering input. It's actually very weighted, which I'm not expecting out of an American-made vehicle. Usually vehicles in this market from America have looser and lighter steering, but there is some weight to this vehicle, which is pretty nice. Now, I'm not going to say that it gives you some engagement when you are behind the wheel or some feedback, but still though, it makes the Traverse feel rather sporty. All in all, what you have here with the 2025 Chevrolet Traverse is an SUV that does feel capable and also competent in this market. Now, Chevrolet doesn't have to rely on their crossover lineup to carry the brand because they do very well with their pickup trucks and large SUVs. But what they've done to the Traverse now feels like a baby Tahoe. And for those of you who want to get into a Tahoe, but that's a bit out of range and out of budget, the Traverse is a great compromise. It gives you the same qualities and attributes. It drives, I don't want to say similarly, because I know a lot of people are going to jump on me for saying that. But it does feel truck-like. And for those of you who want an SUV that feels truck-like, and you don't want to have that crossover, car-like feel, that's where the Traverse slots into place very nicely. Kind of reminds me of the Honda Pilot in that way. And by bringing up the Honda Pilot, I think the Traverse is closing that gap. Right? The Pilot has always been the go-to in this market if you wanted a rugged SUV that does have 3 rows, especially with the TrailSport model and what they've done to the current generation with that platform and chassis. Chevrolet, in some way, has matched that. And by doing so, they're making this vehicle competitive against Hyundai with the Santa Fe, and also against other models, even domestically, with the Ford Explorer and also that Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now, again, those two models are a bit more rugged and they're also a bit more sports tuned. But for 2025 and this generation Traverse, they have done a lot here. And I think that's what makes it really an underrated choice in this market. Some people might overlook what the Traverse is offering based off of its history and the prior generations. But I think Chevrolet is moving in the right direction with this model, and I think they need to double down on what they're doing here with the Z71. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2025 Chevrolet Traverse Z71. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.